Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Jimmy Kimmel being suspended from his talk show after making comments about the Charlie Kirk assassination. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to the timeline of the incident, then offer my analysis. James Christian Kimmel was born on November 13, 1967, in Brooklyn, New York. He went by the name Jimmy. When he was 9 years old, his family moved to Las Vegas, Nevada. He graduated from high school and attended college in both Nevada and Arizona. Jimmy developed an interest in becoming a radio personality and was hired at a station in Seattle, Washington in 1989. After working there and for a few other stations, Jimmy was offered a position on television. From 1997 to 2001, he was the host of a game show called Win Ben Stein's Money. In 1999, while still working on that show, he added another show to his resume. Jimmy and a comedian named Adam Carolla co-hosted The Man Show on Comedy Central, which was about two men overcompensating for their insecurities and pretending to understand masculinity. In 2003, Jimmy left the show and started hosting a late-night talk show on ABC called Jimmy Kimmel Live. He was in that position until September 2025, which brings me to the timeline of the incident. On September 15, 2025, Jimmy Kimmel made a statement during his opening monologue on Jimmy Kimmel Live, which led to a great deal of controversy. He was talking about the assassination of the conservative political activist Charlie Kirk, which had occurred 5 days earlier on September 10. Charlie was murdered by a sniper while appearing at a scheduled event at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. The authorities indicated that a man named Tyler Robinson was the assassin. There were different theories about what motivated Tyler. The authorities indicated that he was motivated by left-wing ideology. Tyler's mother said that he had become more pro-gay and trans rights-oriented. In addition, Tyler was living with a transgender lover at the time of the assassination. Jimmy Kimmel knew, or should have known, about Tyler's potential motivation. However, during his monologue, he said, quote, "We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang, desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it," unquote. It's not clear why Jimmy decided to blatantly lie, but many people believe it was to advance his own political agenda. Jimmy has been criticizing Donald Trump and Republicans for many years. It's a core part of his routine. On the next day, September 16, 2025, the chairman of the FCC, Brendan Carr, commented on the situation while on a conservative podcast. Brendan described Jimmy's behavior as some of the sickest conduct possible and part of a concerted effort to lie to the American people. He continued by saying, quote, "I mean, we can do this the easy way, or these companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead," unquote. This made it sound like he was threatening regulatory action against companies like ABC and Disney. Historically, the FCC has not interfered with political commentary. Brendan's implication represented a significant deviation from this tradition. A few hours later, the largest television station owner in the United States, Nexstar Media Group, announced that Jimmy Kimmel Live would be pulled from all its ABC-affiliated stations. The company said, quote, "Mr. Kimmel's comments about the death of Mr. Kirk are offensive and insensitive at a critical time in our national political discourse, and we do not believe they reflect the spectrum of opinions, views, or values of the local communities in which we are located," unquote. A few minutes later, ABC announced that Jimmy Kimmel Live would be indefinitely suspended nationwide. On September 17, 2025, Donald Trump appeared to be joyful about Jimmy's misfortune, posting on Truth Social, quote, "Great news for America. The ratings-challenged Jimmy Kimmel show is canceled. Congratulations to ABC for finally having the courage to do what had to be done," unquote. Trump also called for the cancellation of two other shows, The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon and The Late Show with Seth Meyers, which are both on NBC. Later, at a news conference, Trump said that Jimmy was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else. He suggested that Jimmy was not talented. In an interview after this, Trump suggested that networks who criticized him should maybe have their licenses taken away. Apparently, he didn't realize that the FCC regulates TV stations, not networks. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. There have been a lot of strong responses to the suspension of Jimmy Kimmel. An editorial in the Free Press, which was founded by a former New York Times editor, said, quote, ABC benched late-night host Jimmy Kimmel. That in and of itself is no great loss to comedy, but the circumstances under which he has been suspended should alarm anyone who cares about free speech, unquote. Anna Gomez, the lone Democrat on the 3-person FCC commission, said that the agency did not have the authority, the ability, or the constitutional right to punish Jimmy Kimmel. She stated, quote, we cannot allow an inexcusable act of political violence to be twisted into a justification for government censorship and control, unquote. As far as a defense for what happened to Jimmy Kimmel, some people have noted that a private company suspended him. A private company would possess the right to do that. This point of view appears to ignore the influence exerted by the FCC, namely the threat of taking regulatory action. Item number 2. Does the FCC have the authority to sanction ABC, Disney, or other companies holding broadcast licenses? When the FCC grants a license, it is under the condition that the broadcasters serve the public interest, convenience, and necessity. That duty is somewhat vague. Under the First Amendment, the FCC cannot require broadcasters to avoid particular viewpoints or content simply because some people find them offensive. Now, in the case of Jimmy Kimmel, he was spreading misinformation. He made a false statement. Does that change anything about what the FCC could or could not do? As far as promoting misinformation, there is no FCC policy against that. The FCC does have rules around defamatory falsehoods, but those generally do not cover political commentary that is opinion, debatable as far as whether it is true or not, or where someone is expressing a viewpoint. Jimmy may have made a false statement, but his speech could still be considered an opinion. Item number 3. What about the argument that Jimmy was suspended by a private media entity, not by the government? Again, some people argued that what happened here was simply a private company conducting business how they see fit. They were allowed to suspend Jimmy because his ratings were low or for a variety of other reasons. It wasn't exactly financially productive for them, and there was talk about his show coming to an end soon anyway. The FCC did not take regulatory action against Jimmy, so is this really a free speech issue? I think the problem here is that the FCC threatened to take action. Therefore, they exerted pressure on media companies. It appears as though the FCC did interfere with free speech. Item number 4, what do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Figures aligned with the mainstream media typically promote left-wing values. The research on this topic is pretty clear. It is not a secret in any way. Jimmy Kimmel fell in line with this pattern and frequently criticized conservatives, even though it cost him much of his audience. Donald Trump has been a frequent target of criticism, including from Jimmy. Trump has repeatedly expressed his disapproval about this criticism. The television station owner, Nexstar Media Group, is seeking approval from the Trump administration to acquire another large owner of television stations. This $6.2 billion deal would increase the reach of Nexstar from almost 39% of U.S. households to 80%. Clearly, the company would be very interested in the deal going through. But there is a problem. It can't happen unless the FCC eases government limits on broadcast station ownership. I think what may have happened here is that the company saw a way to please the Trump administration and facilitate the deal. When Jimmy Kimmel made a false statement about how Trump supporters were describing the man who allegedly assassinated Charlie Kirk, Nexstar seized on it. They believed they could make an example of Jimmy and ingratiate themselves with the Trump administration. Jimmy has said many offensive things during his career. This particular statement did not really stand out. The reason Nexstar focused on it was the falsity of the statement. They caught Jimmy in a lie, and he didn't really have a defense for that part. Again, this is just a theory, It seems like this was all about a media company making money. There's one thing the media likes even more than promoting a liberal agenda, and that is getting richer. Some people are saying that Trump is forcing the media to do his will, like the media is cowering in fear. That is an interesting theory, but one could argue this from the other angle as well. Maybe the media companies are manipulating Trump because his narcissistic characteristics make this ridiculously easy. Trump is arrogant, grandiose, petty, and overly sensitive to criticism. If the media removes this criticism of him, maybe he will give them approval so they can make billions of dollars. Jimmy Kimmel was an easy target for the media because he is really not that popular anymore, and many conservatives are tired of his boring and repetitive commentary. He is extremely predictable at this point. He was probably on the way out anyway, so getting rid of him did not negatively affect the bottom line. Suspending him in exchange for building goodwill with Trump is a good deal for the media, much more valuable than whatever Jimmy could do for them. In my opinion, both Trump and the media made mistakes here. Free speech needs to be protected. The Trump administration should not have pressured the media, and the media should not have given in to Trump, even if they did so for profit. Jimmy is a monotonous critic with questionable talent who normally would have quickly faded into obscurity. Now he may transform into an unlikely champion of free speech. The suspension may seem like bad news for him, but it may be just what he needed to save his career. Those are my thoughts on the controversy surrounding Jimmy Kimmel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon.